My name is Brooklyn. I am 28 years old. And at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, my phone lit up with a sentence that tried to rearrange my reality. We are moving in on Friday. Mom already agreed. Clean out the studio. No question mark. No, please. I read it twice. Then again, like a riddle whose answer was supposed to be my compliance. We are moving in. As if my home were a public park bench and my life the napkin dispenser. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just opened my contacts and called Zach, the security contractor. Full perimeter. I said, "Now, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My house isn't just a building. It is a renovated carriage house deep in the woods of Asheville, North Carolina. It sits on a wooded lot. Detached. Keyed. And paid for. I spent $65,000 of my own money turning a rotting shell into a sanctuary. Every beam. Every window. Every square foot of oak flooring was paid for with my labor as a landscape architect. It was a monument to the fact that I had survived them. And now, Layla wanted to occupy it. Lila is my younger sister, 25 years old, and a professional victim. The last time she texted me was 3 months ago. She needed $4,500 for a business launch. She claimed she was starting a boutique marketing firm. I sent the money because that is what I was trained to do. 2 days later, she posted photos from a luxury resort in Tulum with the caption, "Luckiest girl alive." There was no business. There never was. It was just another tax I paid for being related to her. Looking at that text message in the dark, the blue light illuminating my kitchen, I asked myself the question I should have asked a decade ago. Why? Why did I send the money? Why did I let her borrow my car, only to have it returned with a dent she denied making? Why did I let my mother, Andrea, guilt me into apologizing when Layla stole my identity to open a credit card? For years, I thought my high tolerance for their chaos was a superpower. I thought I was the strong one, the resilient one. But looking at the woods outside my window, I realized it wasn't resilience. It was conditioning. This is the trap of normalizing cruelty. When you grow up in a war zone, peace feels suspicious. You learn to interpret abuse as love and boundaries as aggression. My parents had trained me to believe that my stability existed solely to subsidize Layla's disasters. I was the safety net they didn't have to pay for. I had normalized the fact that my pain was the price of admission to this family. But tonight, the price had gone up. Layla and her boyfriend, Hendrix, weren't just asking to stay for a weekend. Moving in implies residency. It implies rights. They were trying to plant a flag in the soil I had bought and bled for. I looked at the timestamp on the message. 11:47. They sent it late. Assuming I would be asleep. Assuming I would wake up in a panic and just say yes because it was easier than fighting. They were banking on the old Brooklyn. The one who apologized for taking up space. But that Brooklyn didn't live here anymore. This wasn't a family dispute. This was an invasion. And you don't negotiate with invaders. You fortify. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Zach pulled into my driveway in a van, loaded with enough equipment to secure a small embassy. Zach is a security contractor I worked with on a high-end landscape project last year. He is 30 years old, speaks in short sentences, and understands that when a woman asks for a full perimeter lockdown, you do not ask if she is overreacting. You ask where the blind spots are. We didn't rely on Wi-Fi. My house is too isolated for that. Tucked away in the dense woods where signals can be spotty and easily jammed. We went hardline. We drilled through brick and mortar to run fiber optic cables that couldn't be interrupted by a cheap signal blocker bought online. We installed cameras at the gate, the front door, the back patio, and the studio entrance. We put motion sensors on the windows that would trip a silent alarm if the glass so much as vibrated. But the physical hardware was only half the fortification. The legal barrier was the other half. In North Carolina, tenancy laws are tricky. If someone stays in your property long enough, or receives mail there, or claims they have an oral lease, removing them is a nightmare. It is called squatting. But the law calls it a civil dispute. I wasn't going to let it get that far. I printed out specific no trespassing signs, the kind that cite the exact penal code, and posted them every 50 feet along my property line. Then I drafted a notice of non-tenancy. It was a legal document stating explicitly that Layla Morrison and Hendrix Cole were not residents, had never been residents, and had no permission to enter the premises. I taped one to the front door and one to the studio door, then photographed them with a timestamp app. By 4 in the afternoon, my home was no longer just a house. It was a fortress. I stood in the center of my living room watching the multi-screen feed on my iPad. I could see every angle of my property. I could see the wind moving the pine trees. I could see the squirrel running across the porch. It felt cold. It felt military. And for the first time in 3 days, my heart rate slowed down. I had dug the moat. Now, I just had to wait for them to try and cross it. Friday arrived with a gray sky and the heavy humidity of a storm waiting to break. I didn't stay at the house. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a face-to-face screaming match where they could cry and manipulate me. I drove to a coffee shop 3 miles away, ordered a black coffee, and opened my laptop. I sat there like a sniper in a cafe, watching my own front door through a high-definition lens. At 10:15, my phone buzzed. Motion detected at the driveway gate. On the screen, a beat-up yellow moving truck rumbled onto my gravel driveway. My stomach tightened. A visceral reaction to the audacity. They hadn't brought an overnight bag. They had brought a U-Haul. Layla hopped out of the passenger side. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a latte, looking at my house, not like a guest, but like an owner, inspecting her new acquisition. Hendrix followed, looking tired and dragging a large suitcase. They walked right past the no trespassing signs without a glance. Layla marched up to the studio door and tried the handle. It was locked. She frowned, jiggled it, then pounded on the wood. When that didn't work, she pulled out her phone. My phone rang instantly. I declined it. On the screen, I saw her face twist in annoyance. She typed a text. "Open the door. We are here." I didn't reply. Instead, I pressed the microphone button on my app. My voice boomed out of the hidden speaker on the porch, crisp and metallic. "Layla, you are trespassing. Leave the property immediately." She jumped, looking around wildly before spotting the camera. She pulled down her sunglasses and glared into the lens. "Naomi, stop playing games. Mom said the studio is open. We have a verbal lease." There it was. The magic legal words, verbal lease. They had rehearsed this. My phone lit up again. Incoming call from Mom. "This time?" I answered. "Brooklyn, what are you doing?" Her voice was shrill, vibrating with that specific frequency of indignation she reserved only for me. "Your sister is standing outside in the cold. She says you locked her out. She is trespassing." "Mom, and she is claiming she has a lease. Did you tell her that?" "Of course she has a lease. She is family. We agreed she could stay there until the business gets off the ground. You have plenty of space." "Brooklyn, why do you have to be so selfish?" I watched Layla on the screen. She was now trying to peer through the windows, shading her eyes with her hands. And in that moment, listening to my mother defend a 25-year-old woman trying to break into my home, I finally understood the architecture of our family. This wasn't just favoritism. This was a pathology. It is called the golden child and black sheep dynamic. Lila is the golden child. She represents my parents' idealized self, the one who deserves everything without working for it. She is their projection. If she fails, they fail. So they must prop her up at all costs. I am the scapegoat. The black sheep. I am the truth teller who threatens that delusion. My independence is an insult to them because it proves that Lila's failure is her own, not the world's. They need Layla to be the victim so they can play the saviors. And they need me to be the villain so they have someone to blame for the mess. The realization didn't hurt. It clarified. I wasn't fighting a sister. I was fighting a system. I am calling the police. "Mom." I said, my voice flat. You wouldn't dare. She's your sister. Watch me. I hung up and dialed 911. I gave the dispatcher my address and told them there were intruders attempting to force entry into my guest cottage. I told them I had video evidence of them trying the locks. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled silently up the driveway. On my screen, I saw Lila's arrogance evaporate. She started waving her hands, pointing at the house, pulling out her phone to show the officer texts, probably from Mom. The officer wasn't interested. He pointed to the no trespassing sign. He pointed to the U-Haul. He gestured for them to get back in the truck. Hendricks looked relieved. Layla looked murderous. She screamed something at the camera, a final curse I couldn't hear, before slamming the truck door. As they backed out, kicking up gravel, I took a screenshot of the license plate. They were gone. But as I watched the dust settle on my empty driveway, I knew this wasn't a victory. It was just the opening skirmish. Layla hadn't left because she accepted my boundary. She left because she lost an audience. And people like Hare don't accept defeat. They just change tactics. The silence that followed was deceptive. For 2 days, my phone stayed quiet. No texts. No calls. No angry social media tags. It was the kind of silence that makes the hair on the back of your arm stand up. It wasn't peace. It was reloading. I spent the weekend reinforcing the perimeter. I checked the camera angles, cleared brush away from the windows, and double-checked the motion sensitivity settings. I didn't leave the property. I ordered groceries online and had them left at the gate. I felt like a general waiting for the second wave. On Monday morning, I called a lawyer, not a family lawyer, but a property rights specialist named Davis. I explained the situation, sent him the photos of the no trespassing signs, the notice of non-tenancy, and the video of Layla trying the door. He was impressed. You have done everything right, he said, but you need to be prepared. If they claim residency, even falsely, the police might hesitate to intervene next time. They hate getting involved in civil matters. We need to make it crystal clear. This is criminal trespass, not a landlord-tenant dispute. He drafted a formal cease and desist letter, citing the specific statutes and including the police report number from Friday. He sent it via certified mail to my parents' address and Layla's last known address. It was a legal warning shot. Stay away, or face prosecution. Wednesday night, the storm finally broke. I was in the kitchen making tea when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then the house plunged into darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The Wi-Fi icon was gone. I checked the security app. Offline. The cameras were down. They hadn't just cut the power. They had cut the fiber optic line. They knew my system relied on the internet to upload footage to the cloud. They thought they had blinded me. Panic flared, hot and sharp. But I forced it down. This was the moment I had prepared for. I moved through the dark house by memory, not turning on a flashlight. I didn't want them to know where I was. I went to the utility closet where the main server rack lived. Zach had been thorough. He hadn't just installed cloud cameras. He had installed a local failsafe, a hard drive tucked away in a locked steel box, recording every feed directly from the cameras via hardwired cables. The cameras had battery backups. The system was still running. It just wasn't broadcasting. I pulled up the local feed on the dedicated monitor. The screen glowed green in the darkness. Motion at the studio door. A shadow moved across the frame. It wasn't Layla. It was too tall. Too heavy. The figure stopped at the door and turned on a flashlight. The beam cut through the night, illuminating the face. It was my father, Robert. He was wearing dark clothes and gloves. He looked around nervously, checking the corners of the roof where the cameras were mounted. He thought they were dead. He pulled a crowbar from his jacket. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who sat silently at dinner while my mother rewrote reality, was breaking into my home. I watched, frozen, as he jammed the crowbar into the door frame. The wood splintered. He pushed, and the door popped open. He slipped inside the studio. I should have called the police right then, but I needed to know what he was doing. He wasn't carrying bags. He wasn't moving furniture. He went straight to the desk in the corner, my old drafting desk that I had left in there. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. He opened a drawer, placed the envelope inside, and closed it. Then he turned and left, pulling the broken door shut behind him. He wasn't stealing. He was planting evidence. I waited until his car headlights disappeared down the driveway before I moved. I grabbed a flashlight and ran to the studio. The door frame was mangled. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and betrayal. I opened the desk drawer. The envelope was there. I opened it with shaking hands. It was a lease agreement dated 3 months ago, listing Layla and Hendrix as tenants. With my forged signature at the bottom, a clean trace job, a felony. My father had broken into my home to help his golden child steal it. I looked up at the camera's blinking red light. You thought you were invisible, Dad, but I see you. The hearing was at 9. I arrived early, calm and steady. My family stood in a cluster near the doors, dressed in pity and performance. Their lawyer was loud, sweaty, confident in all the wrong ways. Your Honor, he boomed. My clients have a valid lease. Ms. Travers is locking them out illegally. Judge Vance lifted her brow. Show me the lease. He slapped down the forged document, the one my father planted. Lila rose, voice trembling on cue. Yes. Your Honor, we signed it 3 months ago. And you witnessed it? The judge asked my father. He stood proudly. I did. Perjury. Clean and simple. When the judge turned to me, I connected my iPad to the display. Your Honor, that signature is forged, and the document was planted 3 nights ago. Their lawyer barked. Objection. I pressed play. The courtroom darkened. The screen showed my studio door splintering. My father stepping inside with a crowbar. Him placing the envelope in my drawer. High-definition evidence of a crime he thought no one would ever see. Andrea gasped. Lila went pale. My father slumped in his seat. Judge Vance set the forged lease down slowly. Counsel, do you have an explanation for why your client broke into the defendant's home to plant the evidence you just submitted? He stuttered. Papers shaking. I request a recess. Denied. She faced my father. Mr. Morrison. Stand. He looked small, old. You attempted to defraud this court. Bailiff. Take him into custody. I am referring this evidence to the district attorney for charges of burglary, forgery, and perjury. Andrea screamed as they cuffed him. It's her fault. She made him do it. But the judge was unmoved. Ms. Travers, your restraining order is granted. 5 years. It applies to all 4 petitioners. 1 strike of the gavel ended it. Later, I sat on my studio porch in the quiet woods, a quiet not of loneliness, but of survival. My family was gone by law. My home was safe. The camera above my door blinked steadily, no longer guarding me from them, but guarding me for myself. For years, I tried to be the hero in a story that never wanted me to win. In their version, I am the villain now, and I accept that. The villain is the one who stops bleeding for people who never learned how to stop taking. If you've ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive your own, share this. You're not alone.